and I really in no way feel qualified to be speaking here today, but in front of such a prestigious audience, but I feel very honored to be back here at my alma mater doing this. So yeah, I do want to give a little bit of an overview of what I'll talk about. Feel free to interrupt at any time. I don't really know, how the format typically goes for this. I probably over-prepared, so I don't know. I thought I'd give you a little bit about who I am, how I got here, why I ended up looking for a career change over the last couple years, and then the bulk of what I'd like to talk about is my experience in Coursera and MOOCs and how that went for me. And then at the end, tell you a little bit about the rapid career change that I ended up experiencing as a result of some of that. So who I am, well, you gave quite a bit of that probably, so I can probably skip through some of that pretty quickly. But yes, I do have a couple of degrees here. I got a bachelor's in mathematics and a master's at the University of Illinois, and had a wonderful experience during my time here. I think you mentioned both schools. I was going to name the school from the mascot, but a few years over at Danville High School and then 10 years at Morton High School. Very different settings, rewarding in different ways, the two different settings were. So I feel like once you've been teaching for a while, a lot of times either by the kids or by the staff themselves, you get known in different ways. And so some of the different ways I feel like I was known around the building, particularly at Morton High School, because I was there for quite a while, that I got to be known. I was known as the graphing calculator guy, particularly when the TI Inspire line rolled out. I got really interested in that and involved with that, teaching the kids how to use it, take advantage of it for different activities. I thought it was a really good way for them to learn. So anytime somebody had a problem with one of their Inspires and it needed to be updated or rebooted or a battery taken out or whatever that problem they were having, the kids got sent to me for that. I also was the math team guy and did that pretty much from the time I arrived at Morton. It had been kind of a neglected activity for a lot of years, but I'm kind of a competitive person, and I thought, why can't we take this thing and use it as make a competitive vehicle, a way for learning. And I think the kids really enjoyed it. I know that they did. So we enjoyed our trips to the state tournament every year, and we're typically one of the top teams in the state. And I became kind of the guy with that website, that blog thing. So since 2010, I've been running a site called Tech Powered Math, where I write about a variety of things, but the thing that probably I've gotten the most attention on there for is writing about different graphing calculator things, writing reviews of TI calculators, and they've been very good about letting me have a little bit of a heads up notice when they're releasing new products. In fact, I brought along the new TI-84 CE if anybody hasn't seen that yet and is interested in playing with it. And you mentioned statistics, so yeah, I kind of eventually became the AP guy at my school. So that's something I pushed in the last couple years where I was there. But eventually I did start to feel like I was looking for something different, and there were a variety of reasons for that, and I think one of them was in 2012 we kind of had our breakthrough, and if you go down the list of state champions in our division, it's the University of Chicago Lab School from 2005 on to the present day with one interruption, which was that year. And when you've been striving for something for so long and you finally hit that elusive goal, I think sometimes you start feeling like you might want a new challenge. And there's just so many things that I read about and see about in the news now in terms of innovations that are happening technology-wise. And sometimes I start to get that stirring and wonder, do I have what it takes to be the kind of person that could do something like that in industry? And these are not chosen randomly. All of these are data-related things, even though that wasn't necessarily what I was thinking at the beginning, but all different challenges that companies are solving with big data. And of course, I have different considerations in terms of my family now. When I started off as a teacher, it was just me. Eventually I added a dog and then a wife and then 2 kids. And I thought at the beginning I didn't care about money at all, and I really didn't. And I'm still not a person who's super motivated by money, but there are some realities, right, to raising a family. And eventually that did start to play a bit of a role. So in the fall of 2013, I connected with Julie Bartimus of the U of I Alumni Career Center and started talking about some different possibilities, and she was a great coach for me, and eventually settled that I was interested in looking at data-related careers. She was really helpful in coaching me through the process and some of the different possible things, but it appealed to me both because it still had the mathematics component and it still had the technology component, both of which were very appealing. But as soon as you start to get into that and you start listening to suggestions from people on places like LinkedIn, where discussions are happening about what tools you should go after first to learn and master, it can be overwhelming. There are just so many suggestions about what you should be learning, about where you should be going to learn it. I found that I just didn't know where to start as I started thinking about this in early 2014. And so I was dabbling here and there, but didn't really know where to go. And one day on LinkedIn, as I was getting ready with the kids to make our final preparations for the AP test, and it hit me when I was getting ready for this talk. I think it was this Friday last year. So we were talking a year ago almost to the day. I came across a post on LinkedIn that Johns Hopkins earlier in the month had, for the first time on Coursera, launched a new specialization. And so are most of you at least somewhat familiar, I assume, with MOOCs? Is that fair to say? Okay, so are you also familiar with the concept of the specializations that they're now offering that go beyond standalone courses? So when MOOCs were first started, and I know there are people here who know far more about them than me, but my understanding is that when MOOCs were first started, they were all just standalone courses, just one-offs. But as it's evolved, some of the universities that are making these courses available online have had the idea, hey, rather than just offer these one-off classes, why not offer a sequence of classes that has a continuity to it? And at the end, you're awarded a certificate that goes along with that specialization. And so this was one of the first ones. Jason, you were just saying there's how many now on Coursera? When I started this, there were just a year ago, I think there were 3, and there are now 20 some. And of those, how many are U of I? 4. So you guys gotten very involved with this. You guys just within the last few months?
6 months maybe.
Okay, so yeah. It's incredible how fast this has grown. So I was pretty much, as soon as I heard about this, on the spot, sold. I told my wife, I'm signing up. I'm going to go for this because I love the idea of the continuity and kind of a variety of reasons. One, it had sort of a start to finish solution. So you could see the sequence of classes that they offered. They built from the beginning with the idea that you knew not nothing at the beginning. I think their prerequisites were that you'd know at least through high school algebra, and that you had some familiarity with computer programming in any language. Now, I would say, having gone through the sequence, they're maybe understating those prerequisites a little bit, and I'll talk about that as I go. But they do start with very modest expectations in the first couple of courses, and so I really like the idea of building that continuity from beginning to end with a big sequence of courses, where, as opposed to me trying to jump around and hunt and okay, I've done a SQL course, should I now be looking for an R course, what should I be doing next? And that really appealed to me. I also like the idea that because they were designing it from start to finish, they also had a fairly consistent idea as to how they were going to give me the ability to showcase my work at the end. Because realistically, I was hopeful that I might be able to use my Coursera classes to catch the attention of recruiters, headhunters, but I knew that it wasn't going to be valued in the same way as a degree. So I wanted to have some work to point to at the end and say, look, I don't know whether you value the actual certificate or not, but here's the actual work I did. And so look at the different things that I've done and judge that, don't judge the certificate. And so the computer code that I generated over the course of the sequence was in GitHub. I published a variety of projects on RPubs and shiny.io, and I'll get to what those are later. I had a final project in the capstone, which you're not eligible to do until you've completed all the other courses, and then verified certificates via LinkedIn. So the way that works is they have these identity verified certificates, and you pay a minimal amount, and MOOCs are free, but if you pay this minimal amount, they will they'll verify your identity by, I think I had to show my driver's license at the beginning, and then after that, every time I took a quiz, every time I submitted a project, I had to use the webcam to show it was me, and then type a typing prompt, because I guess we all have sort of a unique typing pattern. Again, I'm sure it's probably possible to fool that system, but once you've done that, they let you share then directly to LinkedIn that you've got that certificate. So, super appealing from cost and time standpoint. $49 per class. I think they've actually marked the first one down since I took it. I didn't inquire about a refund on that. But at the time, it was $10 per course, so $490. 1 month per course is how they set it up. Different ones are different ways. But I really liked the idea that it was short courses, and a lot of them, rather than longer courses and fewer of them. I like the idea of bite-sized courses personally. And I really like the fact that I know different universities offer these in different ways online, but the way Johns Hopkins did it, they were offering, other than that capstone, they were offering them all every month. So there were some that were prerequisites for others, but for the most part, you could kind of structure it how you wanted. And if you wanted to take multiple classes in a month, when you had less on, great. Scale it back another month, great. Take it in the different orders, that worked too. So I had the brilliant idea, why not just compress this schedule? Because they were saying, they were selling that as basically this will take you 11 months because the last one's 2 months long, the capstone. So I thought I'll just ramp this up and be good to go. So my experience. So first off, the kinds of people I encountered in the specialization. I interacted a lot on the forums, and then there were a lot of people forming groups on LinkedIn as well to discuss what was going on in the classes. A lot of people were networking via LinkedIn, which was great for me because I didn't have a very big LinkedIn profile at the time, and those people that I did were all in education. I found that the people that were there taking advantage of the specialization, the vast majority had a computer science background, which I do not, obviously. I took a couple of classes in that while I was here, but it had been a long time. Debugging the occasional program once every couple of years on the TI-84, not the same thing as what we were doing in this. There were some of us that had a mathematics background, but that tended to more be people doing mathematics at a university level, right, rather than people doing it at a high school level like me. There were definitely some people with physical and life sciences background, and then there were some people trying to do it with no math or science background. It didn't seem like they made it very far into the sequence, to be honest. The barrier was pretty high for them, I think. So I set up a plan where I was going to do 2 courses in May, because I knew that the kids would finish the AP test, and I would have very few responsibilities in May, and just really dig in June, and from there just kind of pace myself out the rest of the way. It seemed like a great plan, and if I don't know, how many of you actually have taken a MOOC? Okay, so most people here have not done it. The format, you've got video lectures, you can stream them, or they're downloadable. They give you notes typically. You can download them or you can print them out. The courses I was taking were typically no book, although I've gone on and taken some since where there is a book required, and different courses take different approaches there. Sometimes it's you can buy the paperback, but the PDF is available for free. They do seem to be pretty cost conscious. So I've seen them handle that different ways. I actually printed off all the notes and made big binders and tried to treat it as much as possible like a regular college course. Like I I went off to the library and sat down like I was listening to a real lecture and took notes. And I don't imagine that many people do that, but I found it to be pretty beneficial. Assessments. The assessments we were taking were untimed quizzes, typically. I don't think we ever had a timed quiz, but lengthy problems. I was having to do code to actually program my way through the problems. Short computer-graded coding assignments, and then, so sometimes you'd actually be generating code and then the computer would grade the execution of your code. And then projects that typically involved significant coding. So those would take potentially up to 10 hours to complete. So if you haven't seen what it looks like inside Coursera, we'll see if this, oh, I'm not on the internet. This is a significant downfall of my, is the network open? This is a significant downfall of my plan to show you things. Okay.
Second. And then we'll need to pull up the web browser.
Just like open a new tab.
Yeah, you just go to Google. Is UAC still connected? Oh, there it is. Okay, we'll plug into quickly. Set this campus. I'll take the credentials. Let's see the password. Okay. Sure.
Okay. We'll grab it that way. So if you've never actually been inside a Coursera course, it's everything you'd expect it to be. I guess the thing I would point out is, as you go through these, the
powerful aspects of the R language, and they really represent
videos on demand here.
We'll take some arguments.
Again, you got the lectures, you got the notes. I think the part that surprised me was
Does something that the function does.
how similar it actually was to a traditional on-campus course. I guess I was expecting more, something revolutionary. But I found there to be more in common with an on-campus course than different. What the big difference is probably is the, I'm having a hard time finding the form. Here we go, the discussion forums. The discussion forums are the part that's the big difference. And having the ability to, log in and ask questions and such of your fellow students. And I have to say that some of the later classes I got into didn't necessarily have what I would consider a critical mass of students because not enough students had cleared the hurdles to get to those classes yet. And without that critical mass of students having the discussions, it gets a lot harder to figure out what's going on when you've got that haze of confusion around you, because you really do end up relying on these discussion threads a lot. I did serve as a community TA for statistical inference for course 6 at one point, and so I got to see kind of behind the scenes a little bit at one point. And I will say that the way we were encouraged to interact with the students was to try to, wherever possible, let the students answer each other's questions. Sounds familiar, doesn't it, April? Yes, from our days here. And instead focus on problems in the syllabus or the website misbehaving. It was okay to answer questions for sure, but there just are so many student-generated questions that you should focus your efforts on those kinds of things. I will also say that the course descriptions promise 3 to 5 hours a week of work, and I found that to be not realistic at all. And again, there are people taking these things that are already in the field, right? And now I'm one of those people that's in the field, and I would be taking one of these things with a different perspective. I noticed they've recently upgraded the descriptions, and they now say 7 to 10 hours a week. So I assume they're tweaking that based on feedback, and that's probably a lot more realistic. I don't know that I would have tripled up in June the way that I did. I also found that there were 2 courses where were sort of the bottlenecks, where a lot of people were getting very frustrated and angry and venting that on the forums, and you could see people just dropping out in droves of the program. And the first one was Introduction to R Programming, which was a tough one for me because I just hadn't done any programming in so long. So for the people that didn't have the coding experience, you just had to get past that hurdle and get comfortable again. The other one was statistical inference. And so for a lot of the people that had the coding experience but hadn't done any significant mathematics in a lot of years, that was a really tough hurdle. And for me, luckily, all that was being refreshed in my head because I had just gone through teaching AP statistics. But
Did you say something about R programming, just what it is?
oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So R is a statistical programming language, basically. It's used for analyzing data sets, and it's one of those kind of niche languages that if you're not using it for statistics or data science, I don't know why you're using it. But it's really popular for those things. It's really popular for those things.
And it's R because of multiple regression, or what was the R?
I believe it's R because it's a variant of S. And I don't know why S is S. So S was like a proprietary paid language, and then like a closed language. And then some guys, it's like the Unix Linux thing, right? Somebody went off and said, I want to make an open source language. And so they made R. Again, I don't know where S came from though. As I said, I was really surprised by how similar it felt to a traditional classroom. Notable differences from a traditional classroom. I mentioned some of these. It can be tough to get questions answered. You really don't have anyone to turn to. I felt the lack of being able to turn to a peer when I was confused and say, is this just me or are you confused too? That's really hard. That's a really difficult thing. Peer grading for the projects. All projects in MOOCs are peer graded. I found that people were fairly generous probably with their grading because they all knew we were going to be graded the same way. And I think that the grading system in general, I mean, there's no letter grades. It's pass fail. You get a certificate at the end, and I don't really know what that means, right? Nobody really knows what that means yet at this point. This is such a new thing. Some universities are willing to give the verified certificate, others are not. I got the impression that maybe for some people that was demotivating because they didn't have that reward to shoot for at the end. And other people said it was incredibly motivating and liberating to them. So I don't know, probably depends on your personality. I was really motivated because I really wanted to get through this program and start looking for something new, but if you didn't have that motivation, I could see how that could be hard. The numbers through the end of last year, they did publish the numbers on the program, so you could see a lot of people tried it. Not very many made it through the capstone. These are, I think, fairly typical MOOC numbers. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. I think I've seen numbers on the low end between like 1% completion and on the very high end maybe 10%, but usually falls in that range for a typical course. So yeah, I'm one of the 478 that made it through. I guarantee that I am not one of the I'm not in the top of the 478. I'm not one of the smartest. I'm not one of the most experienced. I'm not one of the most ready to do amazing industry work. I'm just not, because I saw some of those people's projects and they were amazing, and mine was okay. but I just really wanted to get through it. Some of the reasons I think I did make it through. Reason one, native English speaker. A lot people are taking these from all over the world, and I feel for the people who are not native English speakers. You could tell that is a major barrier. I don't know what the percentage is of people who were native English speakers, but it was clear a lot of them were not. I did just get an email, I think this morning, that there's a project now in Coursera to translate these classes into different languages. Just this morning I got invited to take part in that, which I won't be able to because I have nothing to contribute there. I do think that, I'm not saying math is better than computer science. What I'm saying there is I think the math was a bigger stumbling block for people in this program than the computer science. I think you could get your computer science skills up to par faster than you could get the math skills. The no summer job was a huge, huge help. The fact that I just went to the library for 8 hours a day and could just throw myself into it. And I kind of psyched myself into believing I was a real college student. I went and got I bought a Johns Hopkins hat. And put it on. I mean, like, I brought my books and sat it down and pretended like I was a college student. I mean, I did everything I could to tell myself this is a real thing, and I'm going to treat it like a real thing. And I know a lot of people take a lot more casual attitude to it, and that's fine. But I really, really wanted to get through it. And I enjoyed it. I was learning a lot. I already mentioned some of the places that the work lives, so I thought I'd try to show you a few of these. So our pubs. So again, R is really big if you're into the statistical and data computing. And so there's this whole ecosystem of products around R that's sprung up. And we learned a lot of those throughout the courses. And so one thing is R pubs. And what R pubs lets you do is it lets you create documents and publish them to the web. And I don't know if this is going to look impressive or not. I guess is what I'm saying. I'll try to explain here as we go here, because I know we're probably getting low on time. Okay, so just so you understand here, this is going to go, I hope. Okay. So this was all created in R, the same, like, not very exciting to look at thing that I would use for crunching numbers. But they've created this interface that allows you to create beautiful documents to the web. And the part that's really neat is when you're seeing things like these bits of code or these graphs, those are not images that you're seeing. That's actually the code being executed right in the browser. So that was one of the things we were shown how to do in these. I mean, they look like PowerPoint, but obviously they're not. There was also a real emphasis on creating reproducible research, so writing documents in R Markdown. And again, same idea here, right? I'm working back and forth between, with something called knitter, back and forth between human type text with the markdown and then actual code, and it can execute the code and output the diagrams and such right in the document that's ultimately ends up published to the web. And of course I could have done this as output it as a PDF too if I wanted just the ability to email it off to someone. But another thing we learned to do was create interactive, it's going to go right back in, great, Shiny apps. And so this is another thing that's recently being created. All this has kind of been done by these interactive things to the web have all kind of been created by a company called RStudio that makes a really neat IDE called RStudio. That's both the company name and the product name. But this allows you to create these interactive sort of dashboards using, again, nothing but R code. So here's a couple. Here was the first one I ever attempted for Course 9, which is creating data products. And let's hope it loads up here with no problem. So it's really simple, but again, it was my first attempt. And you can just, this is the AP results for 2012, just broken down as a histogram. And you can just select whatever subject you're interested in. And we're all interested in statistics. And there are the results there. I've also got, this was one I did for fun for my blog. You can create ones with maps. So here's the ACT and SAT data, and you can hover and see the % of kids that were tested. It'll instantly redraw it. You can flip to the SAT. It's interesting to see, it's kind of what you think, right? It's the coasts for the SAT, it's the central part for the ACT. And then our final project was to kind of mimic your smartphone's capability to predict the next word. So it predicts the next word there, and I've got all the, you would not believe how many hours went into just that little capability for something that is almost exactly half as accurate as the one on your phone. SwiftKey is the company we partnered with for this, and SwiftKey says they can get it right at about 30% of the time, and mine gets it right at about 15% of the time. So, and again, you could put documentation and all that sort of thing in there as well. So, I'm trying to save time for the questions at the end, but just to wrap up. So what happened ultimately for me was I got the 9th class done. My plan was I would finish, the capstone was going to start in late October and run through mid-December. And so I would put a portfolio of my work up on my blog, Tech Power Math, and I thought I'll start the job search in late January, right? Maybe something will work out by the end of the school year. What actually happened was, as soon as I got the 9th class done and I was adding these courses to my LinkedIn profile and connecting with a bunch of people on LinkedIn, I started hearing from recruiters. I don't want to exaggerate, it's not like I was hearing from them day and night, but I live in East Peoria. There are 2 Fortune 500 companies within an hour of where I live. I heard from both of them in relatively short order. So I started interviewing in October and had a job by Veterans Day. And so, I was spending most of November both trying to get my capstone project done and at the same time trying to wrap up my work at Morton High School. So it was a very busy 6-week stretch there. How the MOOCs continue for me now, I do see them as pretty valued among my colleagues at my new job. I think that the impression I have from my colleagues at work is they see them more as a place to dabble rather than a place to master material. If they tune in and see a few videos and get to answer a few questions, great, that's good enough. Nobody there really cares about certificates, which, I don't know that the certificates are the key thing for me either, but the value I really got out of it was the time I really invested in those projects. I don't think there's any question about that. And as I continue to take more of these classes, some of them have that component down better than others. Some of them it's just multiple choice questions and then there's nothing really to sink your teeth into. I am also finding now that I am commuting back and forth to work and that I don't have my summers, I am also finding it a lot tougher to complete them. So I am probably going to contribute more to being part of the 95% rather than the 5%. I think I've done 4 or 5 since I finished up the Johns Hopkins sequence, and I think I finished about half of them. I think 3 out of 6. So there you go.
Can you tell us a little bit about your capstone project, what it was?
Yeah.
And also, do you think it helped in for the recruiters? Were they really interested in that?
In the capstone project? I think they would have been, except that the recruiters themselves started contacting me before I had started the capstone. Once I actually got to the interview, we had started on the capstone, but I was still in the very early phases of it, kind of doing the exploratory data analysis. I think that the value during the interview process was having the ability to talk about the different kinds of problems I had solved and the projects I had worked on throughout the sequence. Nobody cared about any certificates I had earned, and I knew that that was going to be the case. But being able to, throughout the interview, it was, everybody's doing that interviewing style now, right? Of, tell me about a time you did this, give me an example of a problem you solved like this. Had I not done something like this, I don't know what I would have referred to. I simply wouldn't have had any significant experiences to draw upon outside of the classroom.
Questions? Just tell us a little bit more about the capstone project
Yeah.
itself.
So the capstone project, they handed us 3 rather large corpi, not sure what the word is there, of text. And so one of them was like 100,000 tweets from Twitter. One was maybe 10,000 blog posts. And I forget the last one, a bunch of news articles, maybe 1,000 news articles. So these were very, very large sources of text. And the goal was to analyze those and create this predictive text app that you would be taking in, like you saw there, the group of the phrase that a person was typing, and then predict the next word. And the idea being using the past text that you had analyzed. Part of it was they wanted you to do the analysis, of course, but part of it was to also package it in a web-friendly product and be able to show that you could share the research that you had done in a reproducible fashion. So, I mean, the app itself was, I don't remember what percentage of the grade, a significant part, but not the whole thing. They did want to make sure you could follow it from start to finish. Yeah.
Is some amount of getting the certificate showing that you can persevere through the whole thing? I mean, is that part of what might be valued? In the way
Valued by the employer?
Whoever might, yeah. Because isn't it true that to some degree, just persevering through college even is one aspect of what is valued in addition to the education you get, but just...
Yeah, I think there's some truth in that. I think the thing that they talked about, now there's a little more freedom for them to say, this is what we saw in you. I hear when we can kind of have those more frank conversations now that I've been working there for a while. When I've talked with my manager, and one of the things he said is, what we've seen in you is that you've demonstrated the ability to be a lifelong learner. By going through the program you went through, by sharing your experiences with us, you showed that you weren't going to stop when your degree was done. So I don't know if it's the certificate or if it's being able to demonstrate a portfolio of work. It's probably all those things, right? It's probably not any one thing, but that was what they said they were looking for on our team. And everyone on our team, I think we have maybe about 15 data scientists on our team. Everyone on our team has an advanced degree, and probably everyone's continued to do significant education beyond their degree in some way, or shape, or form.
When the recruiters started to reach out to you and everything,
Yeah.
was that because of stuff you had put on LinkedIn, or did they know about this course? How was that?
Yeah, they were finding me on LinkedIn, and I had a fairly well optimized profile for LinkedIn. Having the courses on there helped. I networked with a ton of people through the program, and I was blogging about the program too, and so a lot of people were giving me those little endorsements that you can get on LinkedIn. So people were endorsing me for R and data science and those sorts of things. And again, I never expected that the LinkedIn profile would get me a job. I just hoped it would get me in the door, That's all I was really hoping for, and I do think it accomplished that.
Very good.
Yeah. Any connection between the exact content that you had in the courses to what you are doing? Were they looking for any direct one?
Are you asking me if what I did in the courses relates to my job now? Very much so. Yeah, I use R all day long right now, and there are things I need to branch out and learn for sure. I mean, there are gaps that I know I need to fill, but it's kind of incredible to look at that list of courses and see how much of it does align to what I'm doing. And I know from going to office hours a couple of times they held on Google Hangouts, and just going and listening to the things that the professors said. I mean, they did consult with industry before they created the course sequence about what they would want to see in a data science candidate. So I think they did a good job.
Are you involved with Coursera here?
Yeah.
Could you tell us, first of all, your name?
Sure. Jason Mock. I'm with the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning.
And the U of I now is involved with Coursera?
We've been involved for the last 3 years, as Lucas mentioned, in the standalone MOOC variety, and then the last 6 months in these specializations, and we have 4 of those going right now.
And how active is enrollment in Coursera?
Very. 2 of our specializations, the first course in those each drew 80,000 students, and the other 2, I think the first courses are in the 60,000 range. And and to be clear, we have 4 of them that have started, each of which are in the first or second course of the sequence.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Really interesting, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.